Hello and welcome to round 5 of the Sam Pearce Motorsport COVID-19 Clio Cup Series 2. Round 1 saw us go to Donington Park, followed by Silverstone National, then Alton Park and Brands Hatch Indy last week. And this week, round 5 is from the American circuit of Watkins, Glen. We do know that qualifying unfortunately has had to be scrubbed because the game chucked a few people out, but the top 10 were all within a second. This is a fast and flowing track, and anything can happen over the next 2 races. As we come into this round, we have our series leader Robert Lewis in P1 on 137 points, Graham in P2 with 124, Ed in P3 with 94, Sam Pearce after that great performance in race 2 last week at Brands in P4 with 88, Scott in the Pro-Am Racing Clio 82, 6 Russ with 81, and Matt, despite not racing for 2 weeks in a row, still hanging on in there in 7th place with 80 points, followed by Alex with 66, Dave with 19, and Paul with 18. So close between 9th and 10th. And also, everything to play for at the front, and a big group of 80, 81, 82, 88 and 94 points, covering P3 all the way down to P7. Let's see what happens. And qualifying didn't go to plan for this race, as we've said. But the grid that forms up in P1 is Ed, P2 Paul, P3 Russ, P4 Graham, Rob is in 5th, Rob the Bear up in P6, Alex in P7, Dave in P8, Sam down in P9, although he actually qualified faster than that, so expecting him to make progress. Scott in P10, again, should be a front runner, and Johnny T bringing up the 11th car. Here we go. And they're away, and Ed gets a good start, as does Paul. Russ behind in P3 as they come down the hill, accelerating and then braking into this first corner. And it's Ed who gets the whole shot, with Paul up behind him in P2. So good to see Paul out in front for a change. Russ behind him in P3 and Graham the Beast in P4. We've seen those two very close together so far throughout the race as we come up the hill for the first time. Everyone holding position, nice and tidy as we go a long straight to see whether or not we do or don't get the draft. And already you can see Russ has got the draft off the 2 front cars, pulling to the inside. They're 3 abreast as they go down the straight and into the very tight chicane for the first time. Looks like Paul's braked a little bit earlier, allowing Graham through, just staying out of the way of the championship leaders. Russ has gone wide and Ed has gone wide as well. So a little bit of chaos, but actually they all sort themselves out. Ed just coming a little bit wider, losing a bit of ground again, and it's Graham who's out the front, followed by Kiwi Russ, Ed in P3, Paul in P5, Scott in P5. A little bit of a gap there between these first 4. Paul hanging on to the back of the front group, but it's Ed who's all over the back of Russell as they come into the tight right-hander, and again to start another lap. Just over 2.5 miles and 8 turns in this very fast and flowing circuit. We do know that lap times will be quick, but it's also tricky to overtake as Ed has a look up the inside of Russ. Is he going to try and make a move? He is, and Russ just cuts across the front grim head, hits the curb, gives Paul a chance to have a run at him, and Paul moves up into P3. So great driving there from all 3 drivers to keep it safe, with Ed just losing out a little bit on that front bit. Out front it's Graham. While all this is going on behind, just a chance to see whether or not he can get a little bit of space. It's just broken away with Russ catching him along this very long straight up into top gear, braking hard down into 4th through the chicane. And Russ going wide, a bit ragged, managing to hang on to it. A great piece of recovery driving there from Russ, and that's just allowed Graham to break away off the front and will also enable Ed to come up onto his back bumper. Paul hanging on in P4, but actually it's Scott in P5 who's making a move on him now down the straight. So Scott making some progress through the field on the outside, getting the better turn in. Paul just tucks in behind with his teammate Sam Pearce behind. So will he concede possession? And that's great driving from Scott up into P4. Now out front it's Graham with just about a second lead now from Kiwi Russ, and very close behind him is Ed. So is Scott going to be able to work his way back up through the field? A little bit further down we have Paul in front of Sam. Oh, it looks like team orders there. Paul pulls over to the right and lets Sam past. Sam is in the championship hunt after that great performance last week and some sound driving there. So Sam making some progress up to P5 and P9 already. And we know it's close throughout the whole of the field. Dave in the north in P7. Following Paul, who's dropped from P2 to P6. And Rob the Bear is following up at the rear end of the field. But Rob Lewis, our series leader, who didn't get much luck with the break on the random grid, has now got a lot of work to do to get up through the field. He's in P8 with his rival Graham out in P1. A little bit sideways there, hangs on to it well. Johnny T following him through, closing up onto the back of Rob, and behind Rob is Alex Neville. So the mixed grid has genuinely thrown up a lot of surprises this race, and Rob's got a lot of work to do if he's going to continue to hold on to that gap that he's got out the front of the championship. But out front it's Graham, followed by Kiwi Russ, followed by Ed. So Ed's hanging on in there right on the back of Russ, not letting any of these guys get away. Scott in P4. They come down the hill into T1 again. Nicely done by Graham. So a little bit of clear air, so he won't necessarily have the best lap time. And Ed's in a great position, sat behind Kiwi Russ as they come along this this long straight. Come up here, they take the right hander, and then it's a big long drag down to the chicane. And will Ed be able to use the slipstream, make up some space on Russ and put a move into him? The other thing we do know is that it also drags the person along in front a little bit as well. So Russ is not letting Graham get away at the front. They come into the tricky chicane. Russ a little bit sideways, but nicely done, nicely controlled. Ed a little bit tidier, just right up on the back bumper of Russ now. Another straight coming up after this long right hander. If he can hang on to him, he's going a bit wider. Seems to have lost a bit of grip, but he cuts it back onto the inside, and they're now three abreast. Nose to tail rather, as they come along this straight and into the fast left-hander. So it's dropped down a gear into fourth, back on the power as soon as possible. As Graham goes a little bit wide, manages to hold on to that position, but they bunch up once more. Russ going wide, will he get a penalty for having all four wheels on the exit curb and across the white line? We'll wait and see on that one. I don't get to find out. So Graham goes defensive on the inside. Looks like he's backed out for a penalty. So he's obviously gone off somewhere across the white line, and that's enabled Ed to get right up on the back of Russ as well. So it's now Kiwi Russ out front with Ed very close behind, nose to tail, literally, as they come up the hill. A tricky place to be because you can't spot your braking markers, and Graham straight away is on the back of him. He just gives a little tap to Ed. Side by side through here is really tricky. Ed's on the inside. He's going to get a draft on Russ. Graham on the outside. Is he still going to get the draft? Looks like he's got Drake live through there as they come along side by side. So are they going to make a move on Russ as they come up to the chicane on the fifth lap? So Russ cutting the grass there, may well get away with it. Ed's losing a little bit, but manages to cut back across in front of Graham. Graham backs out of it, and that's just dropped him off the back of that group. So safe driving from Graham, which is good to see. And we go round again with Russ still out in front. And a little bit further back, Sam Pearce is now over the back of Scott. So Sam's come up from P9 into P5, is now pushing hard for that P4. And in the background, Paul's just hanging on, and there's a little bit of shenanigans between Dave, Rob and Johnny T by the look of it as well. So our series leader, currently sitting in P7, a very quick lap time, has just got in front of these two guys now. And Johnny T's right on the back of Dave, and Robbie's making progress through the field. But the guys in behind him aren't letting him get away either. So Johnny T having a little look at Dave as they come down into T1. With Alex bringing up P10 at the moment. And he does, he dives down the inside. Is he going to make it stick? All those years and years and years and years and years of experience from Johnny T, but Dave's straight on the back of him. And out front, Graham is tracking down Kiwi Russ. So Russ held on to that P1 position. Graham in P2, 0.5 seconds behind, and Ed is not letting him get away either. And just in the background, we can just see that Sam has not been able to get past Scott just yet, and maybe just dropped off the back, and then a gap back to Paul in P6. So they come down the second long straight. The beast is on the back of Russ. We know that Russ is a bit like chocolate under pressure. He doesn't like having the beast behind him. We can understand why. If your rear quarter's there, it's an inviting invitation for him. keeping it neat and tidy. Russ goes a little bit defensive, turns in earlier, so it looks like Graham may get a better run out of there, and Ed's just getting the good drive, but dropping off the back here. So as we come down into T1, there's Graham. He moves to the inside. He's side by side. He's got a great line into this corner, but it isn't necessarily the best line because it may wash him wide. Is he going to make the move stick? He is. So very respectful there by Russ. Gave him the opportunity to see whether it happened, and he now jumps straight onto the bumper of Graham. So he's not letting Graham get away with it either. Rob Lewis now just coming up onto the back of Paul. So Rob making good progress through the field, sitting in P7 at the moment, pushing for that P6. Taking the wide line. It does look like Paul's trying not to interfere in the championship here and conceding to the quicker guys in front, and then going to race for the positions behind. So yeah, he lets Rob through. Rob's gone in there really hot. Paul's got much better lines through that chicane and closes back on the back of him, and it's now given Johnny T a chance to have a look on the back of him too. And Sam Pearce has also now got past Scott, so we missed the move unfortunately, but he is in front and he has been quicker. So it's now Scott in P5 and Rob in P6. So Rob's got a couple of seconds to catch up. And Russ at the front is not letting Graham get away at all. So nose to tail racing yet again. We do like these fast and flowing circuits. It seems to have great racing but difficult to overtake, which we do enjoy. As long as people keep it clean and respectful, it's going to be a good race. Russ makes that turn quite nicely. Graham out front. As they come up the hill, definitely only one line through here. It's in 5th gear. It does feel like the car's bogging down a little bit, and then suddenly you get up onto the level and the car gets its nose as Graham goes wide, holds that outside line, cuts across to the inside. You can see Russ going for the inside. Is Russ going to try and make a move into the chicane? Great defensive driving from Graham, but has he gone in too hot? He's gone in very hot, but he sent it sideways. He cuts the corner a little bit. I think he'll probably get away with that because track limits on that corner don't seem to be too punitive. And we go round again. So right on the ragged edge, some really good car control from all these guys out front, and the top 3 covered by less than 0.7 seconds. And Russ goes wide in the penultimate turn. Ed's not able to take advantage of that as a little twitch of his own, and that's just let Graham get off the front of V2. And a bit further down the field, Paul's now got Johnny T on his back bumper. So Johnny T coming through in P8, and Rob's not getting away from these guys either, so that's allowing Alex in P9 to catch up as well. So although the random grid has thrown up a few interesting points, it is going to be definitely the best drivers that are making their way through the field. But if they get in some clean air and they don't have the tow, it is difficult to catch up on the cars in front, so we are relying on people making mistakes. Scott now back up on the back of Sam. So having taken that P4 away from him, Scott's not giving up either. And what we are seeing is that throughout the whole of this grid and throughout the whole of the field, we have close racing. So Sam goes across the grass there, cuts the inside. Don't know if there'll be a track limits penalty there or not, probably not. Scott keeping really close to Sam. And these two having their own battle. So little battles between people with similar pace throughout the field. And all the time, our championship leader, just lurking in the background there, is starting to track down these guys in a little gaggle of 4 cars. So 3 at the front, then these 2, and then another gaggle of 4 cars. So close racing all the way through the grid, which is what we like to see on these Clio Cup events. As Sam goes defensive on the inside, Scott goes round the outside. Is he going to get enough of the drive to make the move stick? So it all depends on how Sam takes this corner. Manages to get it stopped and turn it in. Scott's got a good run round the outside, but Sam's got the inside line. As they go side by side into T2. Side by side up the hill, and not normally enough spaces. You just see a little bit of rear end wiggle there from Scott. Sam much tidier on the orthodox line. But Scott is really tucked into Sam now, and he's looking to make a move into this next chicane, and all the while Rob is closing up behind him. So while these two squabble, it's just giving Rob the opportunities to close up. And Sam makes the turn quite nicely. So does Scott. Out front, it's Ed in front of Russ. Russ not letting him get away, but as our race leader, Graham the Beast, is just opening up a 1.5 second gap. So Russ sending it in there, losing a little bit of the back end, and Ed going really wide on the way in as well. Nose to tail in these two positions. And Scott all over the back of Sam, not letting up, which, as you can just see, Rob Lewis behind him is catching up Scott. Just around about a second off of it, and he's bringing Paul with him back into it. And there's a cone of some description. Someone's obviously hit a cone somewhere. Paul avoids that narrowly. It's now sat in the middle of the track and off the racing line. So Rob just creeping up onto the back of these two, with Graham still out front and Russ followed by Ed, around about 1 second between each of those guys. So not much to watch there right this second. So we'll stick with these two. So Scott in the blue car, Sam in the white, in the silver and red car. Scott looking racy, trying to pull up alongside, but as soon as he pulls out, he's on the outside line. He's going to have to wait for Sam to make a mistake. So Sam braking heavily, gets it in there, gets it a little bit sideways. They're both drifting again. Good driving from the pair of them. Not necessarily the optimal lap time, and while Rob's in clear air behind them, keeping it nice and steady. Closing up on the back and bringing Paul with him, who's now got a little bit of a gap back to Johnny T. So something's happening with Johnny. He's just dropped off the back of this group for 3 seconds. So is 2 about to become 3 and maybe 4? 11 laps in, not long to go, and Rob goes wide. Rejoins the track safely. Hopefully that hasn't hurt him too much, but he was making great progress to get up to the boys. And Paul's now giving a little look at Rob, but has just dropped off the back of him. So once again, down into T1. Sam this time not having to go too defensive, can take the normal line, puts it in nicely, and Scott maybe is hoping that's going to pressure Sam into a mistake, because on pure pace, it's either the slipstream that's going to make the difference along one of the long straights, or one of these guys is going to have to make a mistake. So as they come up again, Scott just losing the back end a little bit compared to Sam, who's a bit tidier, that's just enabled him to get a couple of car lengths away. I don't think he's broken the toe there. And already you can see the benefit of that. So Scott straight away up onto the back bumper of Sam. Sam moves across to the inside again. They both go through side by side. Nice and tidy by both. Scott looks like he's just cut that second chicane a tiny bit closer and made a little bit of time on Sam, and also seems to have a better line through there, just a little bit, just half a car length tighter to, and it's going to put him right on Sam's back bumper. There's another long straight here, but it's a fast left-hander and very difficult to make a move. As Scott moves to the outside, Sam stays defensive on the inside, moves back a bit more towards the middle. Probably going to have to scrub a bit more speed. And is that going to give Scott a run on him out of the corner and along the next straight and down into T1, which is another opportunity to make a move. So Scott is right on Sam's bumper. Is he going to make a move? No, Sam keeps it nice and tidy, keeps Scott behind him. Scott doing everything he possibly can, probably flashing his lights as well at some point, just to put some pressure on Sam to see whether or not he can make it stick and make Sam make a mistake. But he normally is very consistent, Sam. He's just broken the toe a little bit. So out front is our leader, Graham, and 0.8 seconds behind him is Russ. Nicely done by both of them. So status quo at the front. In P3 it's Ed. Then Sam and Scott in P4 and P5, and that's the only real close track action, so we'll stick with that for a little bit. Rob just hanging on the back there as well. So Scott being very patient so far, but is he going to try and make a move as we get towards the end of the race? And he thinks, well, it's all to play for. Sam had it on the back of that second race, or the race 2 victory at Brands Hatch, and he's gone wide. And has that ruined his opportunity? He's gone wide, he's hit the wall, it's killed his pace down the straight, and that will enable Sam to get away. So, as we've said before, lurking behind and not letting him get away either is Paul, is Rob Lewis. So Rob up in P6. Is that the indication that he needs to try and get on the back of Scott? in P5. Paul hanging on in there in P7. Not letting the championship leader get away from him, so good showing. Just catching up on the back. So Scott in P6, P5 rather, just losing a little bit of time from Sam there, and he's gone really wide in the chicane. Manages to get it together, but that is going to give Rob, who's sitting behind him, a little bit of a sniff at him. As we come along the second long straight. Don't need 2 invitations for Rob. Down a gear, sends it in, nicely done. Nicely done again, nice and tidy. Hasn't really made up much time on Scott there. This is the view that all of our drivers are forced to have. Braking and down on the power a little bit better, a little bit smoother, maybe catching up a tiny bit. In the background, Paul's got a great view of what's going on ahead, so if our series leader is to catch him and maybe make a move trying to get that extra place, then Paul is really well positioned to maybe pick something up. Sitting nicely in P7 ahead of Alex. Braking down into the hairpin, into the chicane rather. And Rob is really on the back of Scott now. Moving around. So having been the guy that was chasing Sam, Scott is now being chased himself. As Rob moves up. Looking to make a move. Is he going to get us a little bit of a wiggle there? No, he gathers it up, Scott. As they race down to the line, so in P1 it's Graham, P2 is Russ, Ed's P3, Sam's P4. But who's going to finish in P5? It's Scott, just ahead of Rob, followed by Paul in P7, then Alex P8, Johnny T in P9, and Dave in P10. So congratulations to Graham on a fantastic victory. Well done to Kiwi Russ in P2, and Ed rounds out the podium in P3. So some fantastic racing, really close, nice and clean, really well navigated by everyone. And let's see how that works up the championship points after our next race.